So good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us and welcome to another CLD Scotland online forum. It's lovely to have you all here, and a huge welcome to our speaker tonight, Vikki Carpenter from the CLD Standards Council. Vikki's basically me telling us all about the CLD Standards Council, what it is and what it can do for us and all our work in the community. Just before I hand over to Vikki, some housekeeping. If you could just keep your microphones muted whilst Vikki's talking, I'll be monitoring the chat, and there will be opportunities for you to come on mic, especially if we are a small group, to ask questions and reply to anything that Vikki's talking about. And I knew my cat was just into Vikki. I knew my cat will come just as I'm introducing her. So let's get him out of the way. But yeah, I'm basically going to remove the cat and hand over to Vikki, who, like I said, he works with CLD Standards Council as Development Officer, and that's what she'll be talking to us all about this evening. So thank you, Vikki, and over to you.
Thank you, Emma. So yeah, I'm Vikki Carpenter. I'm Development Officer with the CLD Standards Council, and I've been here for a couple of years now. It's coming up 2 years with the Standards Council. Before that, I worked for Aberdeenshire Council for 11 years as a CLD worker, predominantly doing adult literacy, numeracy and ESOL work, along with some kind of mental health and wellbeing kind of work from that as well. Before that, I worked for colleges, doing kind of enterprise and outreach with adult and youth work. And before that, I worked for Highlands and Islands Enterprise, doing a skills-based learning. So a bit of a varied background, but most of it in kind of informal education, so we say, even though when it was at the college. So today I've come to chat to you about the Standards Council. So that's kind of our aims and objectives set up for the session. So I hope this is okay for you guys. I think I might have met one or two of you at the NATECLA conference. Your faces look familiar, and would have said hello. So really, I'm just going to chat to you about the Standards Council, who we are, what we do, and how that connects with what you do within regards to ESOL and being an ESOL practitioner. I've got a little kind of hands up really before we get started. So hands up if you've heard of the Standards Council before, the CLD Standards Council. Okay, cool. Hands up if you know what we do. If you haven't heard of us, then you won't know what we do. But for those of you who are, do you know what we do? And are you a member? Oh, I have 2 members. Fabulous. Okay, grand. Well, I'm going to do a little bit of chatting, and then I will get some time for you to ask some questions, and then you guys will have to do a little bit of work as well, looking at some of the things that we do. But before we get started, I am going to maneuver between screens. Sorry, I need to stop sharing and share it elsewhere because I've got a little video just to play for you. Give me 2 seconds. There we go. Okay, so I'll jump back to presentation. So we'll pick up on some of those bits that was in the video, but we won't go over everything because we've got an hour and I can talk for Britain. So I'll only cover some little bits and pieces today that I think are a bit more relevant to you. So with regards to community learning and development, it's called CLD as we call it. CLD is a field of professional practice. So therefore it's a profession and a workforce that really enables people to identify kind of their own individual and collective goals, really, to engage in learning and take action about bringing that change for themselves and for their communities, which is what you do in ESOL. So it uses a range of formal and informal methods of learning and social development with individuals and those groups within different parts of our communities. And our CLD programs and activities are developed in dialogue with communities and participants, working particularly with those excluded from participation in the decisions and processes that really shape their lives. So through working these ways, CLD really does extend that reach of democracy, and it kind of widens its scope. So it's a value-based practice, and therefore kind of practitioners have committed themselves to those CLD values that are self-determination, inclusion, empowerment, working collaboratively, and promotion of learning as a lifelong activity. So hopefully in this kind of list of CLD practitioners, we come in all different shapes and sizes and places and spaces that we take up. But hopefully you can see yourself and the people you work with and the work that you do kind of reflected in this list. But we do know that not all paid or volunteer practitioners know that they're part of the CLD sector, especially in adult literacies and ESOL. We are quite spread about and do lots of different pieces of work, and not necessarily under a title of CLD. We have a whole range of job titles depending on what the funding permits and where that comes from and who we're employed by. But then that also makes us wonder, do our learners know that they're engaging with that CLD service, that profession, and with those values and ethics as well? So I don't know what your thoughts are of that. Do you think of yourselves as CLD practitioners at all, or are you ESOL tutors and that's it? Mix, Emma? ESOL tutors? Yeah, we can be many hats and have many names. So the Standards Council itself, we're the professional body who work and volunteer in community learning and development across Scotland. So we're a member-led organisation, and our approach and work plans to deliver our core responsibilities are actually defined by our member and our committees, who are populated by members, and based on feedback then from that wider membership group as well. We're funded by the Scottish Government, and they ministerially appoint our chair, who is Alan Sherry at the moment, who comes from a college and community learning and development background. So the Standards Council aims to kind of govern itself and manage its own business as a professional body, a little bit like EIS and GTCS. We kind of base that on a framework agreement with our host organisation, which is Education Scotland at the moment, and we carry out that remit set for us by Scottish ministers. We've got strategic guidance for community planning partnerships and community learning and development, and that sets out the government's commitment to community learning as a consistent and central part of public services, of what ESOL is part of that provision. And so the requirements for community learning and development, there's set regulations from 2013 that kind of support that commitment, but they're very loose requirements, so they can be interpreted by many in many different ways of what that service may shape or look like. There's also guidance for local authorities as well, implementing those requirements. And it kind of gives reference to that wider policy context. And I'm going to come on to policy in a little bit, because I think that's quite important for for the sector. But obviously some of that policy context is that youth work strategy, which the previous one was 2014, and we're waiting for the new youth work one to come out. It's been put on hold. There's adult learning strategy that recently came out 2022, so up to 2027. And then you've got a previous ESOL strategy, which ended in 2020, unfortunately, some might say. But we have the New Scots integration strategy, which kind of comes in its place, sort of, as well as many parts of that Community Empowerment Scotland Act. So there's community wealth building and participatory budgeting, things like that. So there's quite a lot of legislation across that landscape. So the Standards Council itself, we're quite a small team. We only have 8 staff members. We have our director, Marion Allison, our assistant director, Ross Martin, and then 4 development officers, of which I'm one of them. And we support the 3 committees as part of our remit. I support the registration committee. I'm also lead for policy and for equalities. And we have another part-time officer who deals with registration processes. I do the kind of PR and the blurby bit. She also looks after the website. So we're kind of a small team, and we do a bit of mix and match as we go along. Any questions on what we do so far, or are you happy for me to carry on? Yeah, you okay? So kind of what we do, I want to give you a bit of a current overview before I get you guys chatting. This is kind of a snapshot in numbers. I'm sorry the writing's quite small on there, but it's taken from our annual report from last year, 2022-23. So actually currently we've got just over 3,200 members now. And we've just finished engaging with the CLD review, the independent review of CLD, which has been happening the beginning part of this year, well, from December. It's just come to an end, the consultation part. We're waiting for the report to come out in June. So with that review, we engaged just purely on that review. We've engaged with over 1,000 members through online and face-to-face sessions and through questionnaires and things like that. So this year's annual report, I think, will have significantly higher numbers in engagement and participation, because that's over and above our normal pieces of work that we do. And I'm going to pick up on some of them in a wee minute. But I want to come first to that competent practitioner framework, because as I said earlier, we're a value-based practice. So our professionals have committed themselves to those values that I mentioned earlier. We've also got a code of ethics for CLD, which was developed by the CLD Standards Council, working with practitioners in the field. And this enables practitioners to apply these values and the decisions that they need to make, and making sure they're following that code of practice and that code of ethics. So the CLD competence framework, which you've got an image of the booklet there, and I'll put a link in the chat if you can download it yourselves. That just kind of describes the knowledge, skills and attributes required within the practice of CLD. So it goes across the 7 competencies, the values and the code of ethics, and provides the basis for practice that happens in varied settings in public and third sector. So we're going to have a little bit of a closer look at 3 of those 7 competencies. And I say we, I mean you, are going to have a wee look at some of those, just to kind of see how that fits with what you do within ESOL and the work that you do specifically within your sector. So over to you, because we're a small group. We can just take our mics off and have a chat, but I'll give you a couple of minutes to have a think about it. Or if you want, if you prefer, you can kind of stick your comments in the chat bar, and Emma will keep an eye on that for me if that's okay. But we're going to have a quick look, first of all, at the know and understand the community in which we work, which is one of our competencies. So the purpose of this concept of this competency is so that practitioners can work with individuals and communities to identify and plan action-based knowledge of some of that internal and external influences at work. So it's understanding the context of the work that we do, where it takes place, and where it be based on our knowledge of social, political and wider environmental influences on communities. So competent CLD practitioners are aware of kind of that global local factors which impact the community which they work. So as a competent practitioner with an understanding the community in which we work, you should be able to demonstrate things like that you can conduct an external community or environmental assessment, looking at the context of the community you're working with. Maybe look at internal views and information relating to the area of work that you're working in, what type of projects that you're particularly on, which I think is really relevant perhaps with some of the New Scots refugee and asylum seekers you're doing. Under this competency, it talks a little bit about how you can critically analyze internal and external factors that impact on those individuals. You identify needs and assets that might help information and evidence, things like that. So I would like you to spend a couple of minutes having a think about how do you, within your work, know that you develop that competency to make sure that you can know and understand the community in which you work in and with. I'll give you a little minute to have a think about it. If you want to take your mics off and jump in, you can do. Sadie, you've took your mic off.
Yes. Hi, Vikki. I'm Sadie. I'm really sorry I'm jumping in on this meeting.
No, go for it.
I'm very new to teaching English as a second language. And I was at, because I'm based in Leeds, hoping to be working in Leeds and Bradford. And I'm looking to, I'm looking at later on setting up a community interest company. So I've been teaching English within because we have, I mean, Leeds and Bradford are the areas are very multicultural. So we've just been, when I was looking at developing and supporting collaborative working at the moment, how I feel that I'm achieving some of those things. I'm doing a lot of volunteer work in different areas. So for example, I do a speaking club every Saturday at the Ukrainian Community Association. We do work with Leeds Asylum Seeker Support Network, English at Home, and with another organisation called Women's Whispers, which works with mainly Bangladeshi ladies. So there's so many different, so what we're doing at the moment is, I mean, because I am so new, I am finding kind of my direction by, at the moment, kind of mapping out, you know, places of more need, I think, really realistically, and then figuring out where I fit best. So at the moment what I'm kind of doing is yeah, just trying things out in different areas wherever I can get a bus to, basically. But like I said, I'm kind of more here to learn more than talk.
No, that's fine, Tid, and I think it sounds like you're doing a grand job, because I mean that's what really this is about. It is kind of making sure you get to understand what that actual need is, you know, where to kind of know and understand the communities that are there, what their needs are, how do you, the differences about that, to be able to tailor that, because the work that we do within community learning and development, within ESOL or any adult learning or youth work or any of those kind of parts that make up CLD, is about person-centered. And I think that's where that community-based ESOL it stands out like head and shoulders above
Yeah.
others. I'm obviously a little bit biased, but because we can tailor it, we can look at what language acquisition and what support do people need to be able to live and grow in their communities, kind of when they hit the ground running. For a lot of people, especially if they're refugees and asylum seekers, they're coming in and they're hitting the ground running, and they need to engage with all different agencies. And we're the guys that support that and help that or make that a possibility.
I mean, because we was looking at statistics this Wednesday. Sorry, I've got a really squeaky chair. Sorry about that. I was looking at statistics and like in Bradford, 12% of the population of Bradford don't speak little or no English at all, and when we have organisations, it's just even small organisations that's particularly look at as well at how the risk and the vulnerability of women, especially who can't access services. These are the ones I'm massively drawn to.
Sorry, go for it, Gosha.
I was just going to say that what Sadie said shows that she's already identifying the different needs of the community, because she mentioned various groups, learners coming from Ukraine will be hopefully even working at this point because they are allowed to work, whereas, your asylum seeker learners might not have this opportunity. So putting yourself in their situations and understanding what happens in their life outside of the classroom is really important to try and help them and enable them to participate in what's happening. And when you mentioned working with a group of ladies from Bangladesh, I remember when I began volunteering, we had a group directed at females. So again, all the volunteers and all the tutors were also females to make them feel more comfortable. And there are these really crucial things that you have to be aware of to understand, how you can provide a good service and how you can make learners feel welcome, and also what you can expect from them. I remember not knowing much about the situation of asylum seekers at the start and not being able to understand why someone can't make it to the class. And then you think, well, actually, you realize how little they have in terms of financial support. And sometimes it's the choice between getting a ticket to come to a class or getting some food. So obviously, raising the awareness is really, really important, and being able to provide a good service for them.
Yeah. Can I just commenting on that, Gosha, because I hope I've just pronounced your name right there. Thank you. What I'm looking to do is, because don't get me wrong, in Leeds and Bradford there is great provision for ESOL classes, if you can get into the classrooms, because there are so many people that I'm kind of looking to reach as much as possible those people that aren't making it into the classes. Could be reasons of modern slavery, human trafficking, domestic violence. There could be if they're carers, mental health issues. The reasons are endless. Financial issues, why people can't actually make it into the classroom. And I have lived experience of being in another country, not speaking any of the language, and potentially just how flipping dangerous it was. My intention was simply just to work as a waitress in a touristy area, predominantly speaking English, and knowing that and thinking that was how it was going to work out, and it was all going to be fine, and it did not work out like that at all. So it is so easy for people to be at risk of exploitation.
And I think that's why this competency is quite huge, but it's really, really critical as part of our own profession, and making sure that we are competent in this area, so that we do understand all of those things that you've been talking about, all the different barriers, the different cultural aspects, what it's like, the vulnerability, the added vulnerability, and also that kind of intersectionality, because it's not just about language, it's about all the other things that everyone has to deal with in their day-to-day life. Just because someone's moved to a different country doesn't mean that they've left those things behind. So we have all that, but we need to understand that and be able to then tailor our kind of work towards that. So it's why it's one of the key competencies. I hate to stop this conversation because I could carry it on all night, but I'm going to have to scoot on kind of to the next competency, which actually kind of fits in quite nicely, which is develop and support that collaborative working. So this is competency about, making sure that people are able to be involved in that decision making, and that it really does have the best outcome and impact on their lives. And again, that we as practitioners need to make sure we understand the value and the benefits of that collaboration. It's not being done to, it's being done with or supporting for. And that's not just with our learners, but that's with our partners and kind of signposts and all the kind of key stakeholders that we get involved in as well. So I want you to spend a couple of minutes having to think about your work that you're doing with regards to kind of this competency around that kind of developing and supporting that collaborative working, and why is that key to you in your practice, what that competency might involve. Just while you're having a wee think, just kind of that collaborative working, really the kind of key parts that underpin this competency is about developing and supporting collaborative working within your own organizations. So that's within your own teams and who you work with. It's out with organizations or other relevant organizations and partnership working that you might have. It's supporting that community participation. So that's again in partnership or with your learners and communities of practice, making sure that it's kind of appropriate styles of communication, whether that's electronic, whether that's in the right place. It's back to that knowing your community again. Where does it need to happen? How can people get there? And making sure that we're using that forms of communication that's going to get to the right people using the right channels. It's being able to can maybe articulate and clarify that within your organization and others, and that kind of collaborative working, again, taking that leadership role if you need to be, and identifying place and space really for that collaborative working. And I guess part of this competency as well is about being able to challenge and be challenged on issues that impact on that effective working partnerships, and whether that's within your own organization, whether that's with your learners, whether that's with stakeholders, being aware of tensions and conflicts. And again, working with a lot of asylum seekers and refugees and people coming into this country, we have to be really, really considerate and aware and have an understanding about tensions and conflicts that they might have, even who's sitting in the room. And I'm sure, we need to be a bit more, I say we, I don't do it anymore, but mindful of who's in the room and their culture differences, and like you see. So what are your thoughts?
It does feel, because okay, so if I was having this conversation with my dad and I'm telling him about different places I'm going, obviously not talking about anybody personally, but just the different, he comes from a very he's kind of lived in one sort of area, met one sort of person all his life, so he's like, oh, it must be a minefield. And I think you just all you do is all you can possibly do is be really mindful of where you are at one given time, and and just speak to people, just actually just ask questions and treat everybody with the same dignity and respect that you would want to anyone. There's no way you can, if you're working with such a broad spectrum of people, that you've got all the answers to know exactly what to do. But as long as you've got those good intentions, you've got respect, and you just treat another human being with the dignity that they should be treated with. There's and if for some reason something you do say you get slightly wrong, just be prepared to apologize, you know, and just quickly and see it as a chance to learn. I think that's the only thing, because when you're just asking questions if it's appropriate, without kind of interrogating someone, so say, for example, if in a speaking club, if we have different events or different festivals, and I ask people, and you know, I try and mix with as many people as possible, and when it's appropriate, ask questions about as many different things as possible, just having a genuine curiosity.
It's about that connections, that, isn't it, though? Then is you do give a little bit of yourself, and it's that two-way of communication, so that you're building that relationship as well up. And you're right, Sadie, and I noticed when you first started speaking, you double-checked that you pronounced Gosha's name right. And I think that's something, when you're working with people from different cultures and backgrounds, you become aware of how important identity is, and how important it is someone has a name, and we should get that right. And that's really important. And again, that's building that relationships up, and understanding how to make those connections and how to have that mutual respect, isn't it?
I have to say, I'm at my happiest when I see that it's my learners who are building these relationships, and I always try and encourage that, you know, when they ask each other questions, when they are curious of what happens in different festivals, and what happens right now in their country, and or in their home country. When we have different sessions, I'm quite lucky that in the council where I work just now, I have a development officer, and he really is aware of what else is happening within the council, within different areas. So we can visit volunteer sector, we can invite people over, and we try to encourage the learners to build relationships with people outside of the classroom, because it is so important to share their identity, but also they are building a new life. So, you know, you can't build a life without these relationships, or it's actually really difficult if you do it. So it's always great when they are sharing and they tell you about the volunteering that they do and the people that they meet through it. And I think that's the best part of teaching, when you see those relationships and that they are carrying on outside of the classroom.
And I think that's where that community-based learning really comes into its own as well, isn't it? Because you're able to do that. You're able to develop that collaborative working with other agencies, so that you can spread out into the community and engage and signpost and support learners to kind of have that widened experience, so that they understand not just the language, but where that fits and what that does, and what the community that they live in and what they do. Thank you. Final one is about build and maintain relationships with individuals and groups. We've kind of touched on that a bit already. They are all interlinked. You can't have one competency without the other, really, any of the 7. But there will be times within your practice where you'll be really strong at one part or a couple of the parts, and maybe not doing so much in one of the other competencies. And that's where this competency wheel actually comes into its own, because then when you're doing your own professional development, or you're doing that reflection on yourself as a practitioner, you can kind of go, actually, have I been doing much about facilitating, promoting community empowerment? How am I doing? Have I kind of dropped the ball on that aspect of my work? Do I need to kind of go and refresh? Do I need to go and have a look at policies, or go and have a look at what's going on within the communities that I work? That kind of thing. So with building and maintaining relationships with individuals or groups, it's kind of the purpose and context of the competency. And again, as a practitioner, this is about you being able to build and maintain those relationships with individuals and groups, and kind of demonstrate that you can maybe seek out and engage with individuals, groups and communities, which is what we've been talking about throughout the other 2 as well. But also about practicing those different roles, such as facilitating, supporting, leading, advocating, being an advocate, you know, those different hats that you wear as an ESOL practitioner, which all forms part of your job. And you do have to kind of switch between some of them sometimes, know what actual role you're playing at that moment in time, and what's the appropriate role, and what is what is within those boundaries as well, and it's about that safeguarding for you.
Mm.
It's about that use of dialogue, whether it's formal, informal, and building those relationships and those different styles of communication. Again, back to whether it's electronic and how you cope with that. This competency also is about that dealing with conflict and challenges and being able to handle those things. And that can be dynamics in the workplace with your learners, but also dynamics within your teams and your organizations and with your partners. So that kind of works across that remit. Anyone got any thoughts on this one?
I guess, you know, being here is also a part of linking in within the wider network to see what else people do and what else is happening. And I remember when I started tutoring, I was sort of, you know, left to my own devices, and you feel like you're a little bit on your own, and then you try and help the learners. But I was actually new to the area as well, so sometimes the learners were educating me about, you know, where they go and what they do. But I think it's also really important to just appreciate what everybody else is saying and link in with the learners, but also just link in with your team. And if you don't have a team, then you do need to try and reach out and find out about what else is happening in other areas in Scotland, you know, how learners are being supported, what other services are available to them. And sometimes you then, when you start doing it for a while, you take it for granted that the learners are aware of things, but they aren't. So it's your job to, you know, to then make them aware of it. So unfortunately, one of the classes recently finished, and I was able to signpost my learners to my other class, but then, you know, I also started talking to them about all the other charities that organize classes, not just colleges in Glasgow. And they haven't heard about them, even though that they, you know, they've been in Glasgow for maybe 2 years. It's quite surprising for me, but then, you know, your job is to just make them aware that there's other places and signpost them to them. But you don't know these things yourself unless you develop the relationships, and you maybe have a contact who you can ask, in this area, are you running a class? Can I recommend someone over?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I love going. I cannot think of a time when I mean, this just first thing this morning, I can't think of a networking event where I've not found something, where I've not found somewhere new or another organisation or someone else telling me you've got to find it, saying you've got to find out about what this lady's doing and this lady's doing. Literally, there are, it's so delightful to find when you've got someone sharing the same passion, you know, someone, and there's so many people passionate about empower, you know, for me primarily, my primary purpose is like kind of empowering women within, do you know what I mean, with being able to use English as a tool to you know, access the services, thrive, and it's so when we've got different activist organizations, definitely, and when you've got migrant access projects and you know, there's such a broad range of different you know, volunteering opportunities, training opportunities, educational opportunities. I would be, you know, I'd be hard pushed to find something where someone's not running some activity or organization where people will be welcomed in with open arms, and you've always got that opportunity to bounce ideas off someone, or if you don't know, if you know, especially for me being as new as I am, if I'm in any doubt whatsoever, I do think, you know, I've not met an English as a second language teacher that isn't helpful, friendly, and compassionate. You know what I mean? I don't the two just doesn't go hand in hand for me. But yeah, so it's been really lovely, whether it is colleges. So I worked at this Yorkshire College of Language just recently, and I was really nervous, and I wasn't sure, because like I said, I was so new, I wasn't really sure how it was going to work with teachers being there for such a long period of time. And you know, I really was quite scared at one point, but it was just, but like I said, developing those relationships with people, it's so easy to pick up the phone to be able to say, if you see somebody that's that, you know, that would benefit from one of these services. It's so easy to pick up the phone and be able to point them in the right direction.
And I think as well, it's building those relationships within your network, especially if you're an individual worker, or whether you're kind of a consultant or self-employed, or working within different teams and different parts, part-time contracts, a couple of hours here, a couple of hours there. Having those relationships and having someone to bounce stuff off is really, really important. And again, back to that self-care, which is one of the kind of the key parts of the ethics of the CLD, is your self-care is really important. And if you're working within a communities that have trauma and are vulnerable and difficult, then it's really important that self-care and that connection with other people that understand that you have a safe space to do and talk about things like that is really, really important. And then again, that's back to those building relationships again as well. I'm really sorry to stop conversation, but we're going to have to go on because I'm conscious of the time. So I really wanted to get on a little bit about some of the members' benefits of why we feel that it's important for ESOL practitioners, adult learning tutors, youth workers to be part of the CLD Standards Council, this professional body for CLD. This is some of the benefits that you would get for being a member if you're not already. But some of the things that we do is about building that identity of CLD. Some of the things that we try and do is about raising the profile of the profession as a whole, so people understand, because it's very much as part of education, it sometimes isn't seen, and it is a critical part of the service that we offer in that lifelong, life-wide, wider access to education for all. It's free as a benefit for no other reason than that. But I want to kind of pop on to some of the work that we do, and this is really small, and I'm really sorry about that, but we do quite a lot of policy work, and that's some of the work that I do, because it's really, really important, again, about raising that identity, but also that our practitioners, like I say, we've got over 3,000 members, have a voice, are able to be involved in shaping policy and practice that informs the work that we do and informs the communities that we're working in. So here's some of the ones that we've done just in the last year or so that we've been involved in. You can access all of our responses on our website, and I'll stick a link into the policy side of that in a wee minute. But our members are our community, is part of our organization, and we want to make sure that CLD practitioners have a voice, like I said, so you can shape. Obviously, we've been really heavily involved in the CLD review this year, obviously trying to get as much input into that as possible. But on top of that, these are the kind of other things that we've done. Now you'll see that we've got 2 responses into the New Scot integration strategy review that's been happening. We had an online session, and we met with members and got feedback, and we put in our own response to that review. But what was really, really strongly clear came out from our members was that the whole New Scots integration strategy had a big gaping hole around language acquisition. It seemed to be missing in a lot of its key principles and outcomes. It looked great, and it had lots of really good aspirations and what it wanted to do, and it sounded fantastic, but there was no real mention of language acquisition. And as we all know, that if without that language, those aspirations of integration are never going to happen, because people are never going to be able to be part of those communities that they want to be part of. So on top of the report that we put back in, we also then work with our CLD partners in Education Scotland, and we work with the Scottish Refugee Council, because the Scottish Refugee Council were kind of running the lead on this kind of strategy consultation review. They were working in partnership with COSLA and with Scottish Government, but Scottish Refugee Council would do most of the work. So the actual consultation work. So we got in touch with them, and we did a joint session looking predominantly at ESOL and the whole benefits of language acquisition, how that works, the struggles around contracts, funding, provision, and that to widen the lens right the way across Scotland, shall we say, not just central based provision, but what's happening in the rural areas, what's happening right the way across, and Highlands and Islands and everywhere. So yeah, go and have a look at some of that work. But that's something about a benefit. You get access to coming along to these sessions, having an input, finding about. Most of the sessions we do, we try and get someone from Scottish Government or the policy to come along and have a chat, so they can actually hear firsthand from practitioners to say, this is good, this is rubbish, this is what we need, this is what we don't need. And that's the whole point, making that connection, so we see ourselves as that conduit that allows that voice of the sector to get up where it needs to be. We're just chipping away slowly, that's what I would say, in some of this policy work, but we're getting in about as much as we can. Also, one of the member benefits is we have a Moodle platform. It's called iDevelop. It's our online platform, as well as our website, that enables you to have access to networks, partnerships, communities, and also resources. Now, I know Natekla have their own online resources base and stuff like that, and it's phenomenal stuff. This isn't trying to kind of do anything like that. What it is really doing is a place for networks and communities to come together and share their resources. So one of the things that we support is Education Scotland have their ESOL national network. So we have a space on there, and that's kind of just a screenshot of what that looks like. You can see some of the tabs of that information resources and their minutes and meetings and things like that. So we host that, and there's also we have a forum where people can post a question and get an answer. So we have like that on iDevelop. We also run a Quality, Diversity and Inclusion Members Forum. So once a month we have a topic, and we have someone with lived experience and or working experience of that specific topic that comes along. It's a really safe space for people just to come and spend a couple of hours having a chat. Someone telling you about their experiences and what they would need from that, and what it means to be either Jewish in Scotland or come from the LGBTQ community. I've done a lot of building racial literacy work recently with Education Scotland, and I'm in the middle of working with them to develop anti-racist training resources for CLD. And so kind of bringing some of that work in as well, about unconscious bias and about white fragility and things like that. So that's another benefit for members to come along to that inclusion. And like, it's members led, so it's whatever topics people want to talk about under the equality, diversity and inclusion kind of umbrella, then we'll try and make that happen. On top of that, we have virtual member meetups. So kind of once a month-ish, we have a lunch hour online where some topic again that people are interested in, we get someone to come along maybe to talk about AI or digital skills, what support's out there, unpicking values. We've had people from citizen literacy come and talk about their work that they've been doing about building their resources and their online work that they're doing. I don't know if you've seen citizen literacy stuff, but it's brilliant. I think it's fab. I'm a big fan of that. So there's a lot of different member meetups. And again, if someone said, I'd really like to know a bit more about this, then we'll try and do that. We have a professional induction program. So anyone that's new to CLD or new to the Standards Council, or maybe out of it and come back in for a little while, they can do this professional induction program. You get paired up with a mentor, you run at your own pace. It's just kind of an 8-week, couple of hours a week thing, where you can work your way through an online program just to kind of get your head back in the game, understand the Standards Council, and kind of looking at what the CLD landscape is at the moment. So all of these things kind of feed into that professional learning, and as it kind of says, that's one of the big things that we try and support. We don't necessarily offer a huge amount, but we try and do more informal stuff so that people, and it's led by members, but we do support other organizations to do that, and we do help shape and practice that. And also part of the membership is that people do keep up their professional learning, and they can report back on that on a regular basis. So some of the learning offers that in general that we support is Leading CLD, and that's a program where we get maybe managerial or people that want to go into Leading CLD. Perhaps you might find yourself being managed by someone that has no idea what CLD is or what ESOL is, or and that's can be quite tricky. So that's where this program came from, so that we had, CLD services, ESOL, adult literacies quite often gets moved around, especially in local authority, into different, restructure time every couple of years. Let's move you somewhere else, and you can end up with different line managers. So that leading CLD is a course for people to come along and find out a little bit more what CLD is and how to lead that, and the policy landscape and the background behind that. It's an educator leadership program with Education Scotland. We've got CLD part of that. We're building the workforce wellbeing, we're building racial literacy. If you haven't gone on that and you get the opportunity to do that through Education Scotland, I would definitely, the cohort 4 is just finished, and I don't know whether they're going to be signing up for cohort 5 yet, but it's a phenomenal course, definitely life-changing. I went on it a couple of years ago. And some of the other things that we do, we talked about already, member meetups. We get involved in national occupational standards as well. Obviously, we're a standards organisation, we're standard setting and approval settings. So very conscious of time, I would be really keen to find out what you would like and what you'd be interested to get from your professional body if you were a member of it. There's a little Menti form there if you want to scan the QR code. That would be really fab. And just pop your thoughts in your Menti. I will stop sharing this. Oh, sorry, have you all got the code? Just pause that and share.
But we've got about 6-7 minutes for questions, Vikki, and chat, depending on.
Yep. I'm just gonna.
I just wanted to say thank you, Vikki, because I think it's just so important to raise the awareness of the fact that there's a professional body out there for all of us. And I remember I found about it not through work, but through my own investigation. So, I just think sometimes it's really, really important. Not sometimes, all the time. It's important to feel supported in what we do. And we do tend to be quite isolated if we work in the community. So having somewhere else to turn to, I think, is really important. And having the validation of what we do through being members is important too. So I've got my registration form to be filled in during the holiday.
That would be great. Gosh, I'll look forward to that coming in. Yeah, and just spread the word. I mean, that's what it's all about. We keep saying more members, more clout. That's what we're trying to do. For the CLD review, we've put in, I think, something like 14 in. We've done kind of 11 different engagements, but we put in 14 different responses plus a full response based on different aspects of CLD, because it's so vast and varied, and members were coming up with lots of different things that they were wanting to showcase and also suggest and recommendations. So we just threw everything in the kitchen sink at the independent reviewers. They're probably sick of our emails pinging in, but yeah,
sorry, can I just ask a really quick question? Because I'm in Leeds, am I still allowed to join? Okay.
It isn't. It's for people in Scotland. I'm really sorry.
I thought so. I thought I had a feeling. Do we have do you know if we have an equivalent here in the UK?
No.
I've just been trying to look for it. There isn't one, is there?
No.
It's a shame, because like I said, I'm currently working to engage with to set up a community interest company, like I said, with wanting to support people more who cannot access mainstream education. So having a professional body would be really handy. So but yeah, so if I can obviously hopefully I can kind of listen in on what's happening when you have your events, but in terms of being able to join, no, I'd need to move.
Yeah, you need to come up, which isn't a bad thing.
No, I've got you know what, I was in Scotland recently, actually. I've had a beautiful trip up to Edinburgh, and then I've got plenty of friends in Scotland that I haven't visited in ages, in Berwick as well. It's absolutely stunning. Unfortunately, I can't afford it. But yeah.
And
Yeah, so I can still listen in and and make and hear what's going and hear what's going on though.
yeah, and our website's open. You can go and have a look
Yeah.
and tap in, and you'll obviously Natecla's a great support base for you. So that's you've
Yeah.
got that, which is really, really good. And that's why we kind of reached out and was working with Natecla to kind of support that and support the practitioners across Scotland and kind of offer that little bit of something different. And a lot of it is around that networking and that policy side of things and that professional learning. Obviously, Natecla's got a really good handle on all the ESOL stuff, but without the ESOL strategy and things like that, there's gaps, and that's where we thought membership of the Standards Council kind of helps support that, and it also helps job prospects and other things as well. So, but yes, you need to be in Scotland though, Sadie. Sorry.
Move.
So just to jump in on that, thanks Vicky for the plug. But yeah, Sadie, I put some stuff in the chat box about ways you can connect with Natecla, like the discussion board and the WhatsApp group. So
Thank you.
that is open to everyone, Scotland or not. But yeah, if you do move to Scotland, I do recommend the CLD Standards Council. But
Brilliant. Thank you, Emma. Thank you.
Thank you very much for having me tonight. It's been really fab to kind of meet up with you, and hopefully we'll see some memberships coming in.
And it's been really informative, so definitely thank you, Vicky. And I think Gosh has already been joining, so we will definitely spread the word as well. But yeah, so thank you. Let me just stop the recording.